Today is Monday, the 16th of February, 2026. Good morning. I'm Shitu Benedicta Gold, Jaja Ekoe. Pardon me if I didn't pronounce that too well. Amy, Lawrence, Madam Onaji, Okwalu Akolawale, Sami, Sam, Ugochukwu, and Techno Pop 5 Pro. Please, can you just put your real name there? Let's know you're a real person. All right. Thanks for that feedback, Mr. Sam. So let's get started. It's a brand new week. So as usual, we'll start with the fundamental, then we'll go to the technicals to see what's on the chart. Now, from the fundamental, today, Monday, all day, there is no fundamental event. There is a bank holiday in both Canada and Australia. So there's no fundamental event today. The market will move more technically. But then the clause is that it means we need to also take caution about trading anything that has to do with the Canadian dollar and the US dollar, because volatility on these instruments will be very low today, and there's possibility of erratic movement. Good morning, Madam Monaji. Now, I'll just talk about the key events fundamentally for the week. On Tuesday, we're going to have CPI from Canada, and the volatility is expected. CPI monthly, median CPI, trim CPI, common CPI. That will come up tomorrow, Tuesday, by 2:30 p.m. Now, it's going to run simultaneously with the Empire State Manufacturing Index from the United States, but the focus will be on the Canadian dollar CPI. So we expect volatility uh, on the Canadian dollar tomorrow. Also, 8 a.m. tomorrow, there'll be claimant count change from United Kingdom. This often brings some volatility. That'll be 8 a.m. So let's take note. And on Wednesday, the key event on Wednesday, we'll have official cash rate, RBNZ, that's Reserve Bank of New Zealand monetary policy statement, RBNZ restatement, RBNZ press conference. Definitely, this is just talking about cash rate or interest rate in New Zealand. Is going to come up by 2 a.m. So you can wake up early, set your alarm maybe to like 1:30 a.m. You can wake up early to trade this particular event. Volatility is actually expected. And on that Wednesday, we have CPI coming from the United Kingdom by 8 a.m. also. So if you missed the New Zealand, I mean, probably you're sleeping, which is understandable. We're in Nigeria. It's nighttime in Nigeria. You can stay awake. I mean, you can wake up early to trade the CPI from United Kingdom by 8 a.m. And that's the important event for Wednesday. On Thursday, the key event on Thursday, okay, we have Australia employment change, unemployment rate, 1:30 a.m. And then unemployment claims. Okay, the unemployment claims later in the day, but in the night, for by 1:30 a.m. is employment change, unemployment rate. That's Australia's version of NFP. Comes up by 1:30 a.m. You may as well set your alarm, or better still, if you miss out of that event, don't miss unemployment claims. Philly Fed Manufacturing Index from United States by 2:30 p.m. And on Friday, the key event on Friday, we're going to have retail sales from the United Kingdom. That's the major event for the day. That will come up by 8 a.m. And then by 10:30 a.m. also some volatility will be expected on both on the British pound, because we're going to have flash manufacturing PMI, flash services PMI. In fact, that day is a PMI day, because for Eurozone also we have German flash manufacturing PMI and German flash services PMI by 9:30 a.m. And those are the key events for Friday. Let me still scroll down. And United States by 3:45 p.m. there will be, okay, by 2:30 p.m. there will be advanced GDP quarterly core PCE price index. And by 3:45 there will be flash manufacturing PMI and flash services PMI. All right, so those are the major events fundamentally that we can look out for, from which we expect some volatility, to take advantage of in the market for this week. All right, so with that being said, I'm just going to flip over to the charts, and we'll look at some technical setup for this week. Now, this week, what I'm seeing on the charts, I'm seeing more of swing setup. It means the market is really getting ready for some, medium to some long-term uh, movement. So all the setup I'll be sharing, except maybe the ones you want me to check press later on, but most of the ones I have as at this period, they are mostly swing setup. And the first one I'll be looking at will be the NZD-USD. Now, NZD-USD on the weekly time frame. On the weekly time frame, price is in an overall downtrend, and also we have a resistance. Technically, we're expecting a further bearish movement on this instrument. Now, let me zoom out. Now, you can see there's a valid resistance over there. Resistance. So this area is a point of confluence where the trend line and the resistance is meeting. And there's also a range there, candlesticks with rejection, candles, indicating the potential for reversal. So we're looking for an overall bearish movement on the NZD-USD. And if you take it down to the 4 hour, this is 4 hour. What I'm seeing forming here is the formation of a double top pattern, which may trigger a major move to the downside. So we're going to be watching this closely this week. And currently, price, the new week has started. Price is just, well, let's say we call this a minor range. But what we're expecting is price to break out to the downside. So it's purely a swing setup. However, if you want to trade it like an intraday, what I will advise you do, just a second. Okay. If you want to trade it as an intraday, like I said, you may look at this region as a range. All right. So if price breaks out, we are looking only for a downward movement. If price breaks out downwards, you may trigger maybe a sell on 1 hour down to the neckline region. Let me go back to the 4 hour. So if you want to trade a 1 hour move, you're trading it down to this area here. And that can give on the average some 60 pips possibly. But on the overall, it's a swing setup, and we have to look at it more from a 4 hour. So if you're trading it on as a 4 hour swing, you are only entering when price breaks out below the neckline. That's when you're entering a sell. But if you're an intraday trader, you want to cash in on, the move early. That's when I say you can just take a sell if price breaks out below that box. But overall, it's a swing, and overall, we're bearish. Currently, RSI is at 49. We're expected to drop below that level. MACD is also around zero. So if your RSI clearly drops below the current level, but most importantly, price breaking out below the neckline region, then we are looking for a sell on the NZD-USD. It's a downward movement right from the weekly to the daily to the 4 hour time frame. And if that breakout happens as I'm anticipating on the 4 hour, we're going to be looking at profit in the range of some 65 pips to Fibonacci 61.8, about 130 pips of Fibonacci 17.6, and as much as about 200 pips of Fibonacci 100, because it's possible, with a double top pattern for price to go to the recent low. That's usually what happens, or mostly happens. So we have an average of 60 to about 200 pips of catch on a swing. Now, swing means it could span for days, it could span for the whole week, and it could span for a couple of weeks. It all depends on the market. But that's the setup we have on the NZD-USD. All right, the next setup I'll share with us, for those who are just joining us, like I said, what I'm seeing currently, as in, I'm talking about setups that have high probability, not just anyhow setup, high probability setup. Virtually the ones I had this morning, they are swing setup, meaning the market is positioning itself, for some long-term move. But then even with a swing setup, as an intraday trader, you can still find ways to enter on pullbacks. The swing is just giving you the direction. You may try to find a way to enter on pullbacks. Very possible. All right. I'm also looking at the Euro AUD for this week. And this one has a very, very good setup likewise. Now, this is the Euro AUD on the weekly time frame. All right. Now, the last week candlestick closed as a rejection candle on a previous resistance turn support. Price broke above the resistance. Resistance became support. Technically, we should be looking at a move to the upside. So that's the outlook on that one. We are bullish. And if we go to the 4-hour time frame, so with the resistance on support on the weekly, on the 4-hour, I'm seeing the formation, the possible formation of an inverse head and shoulder, which is expected to trigger a move to the upside. But then the other confirmation is going to be the falling wedge pattern right here. All right. So that clearly tells us that we're looking for a reversal, on this one. The one we did on NZD is actually continuation from the weekly to the 4-hour continuation in bearish, but this one is a complete reversal from downtrend to uptrend with a resistance on support on the weekly and a formation of an inverse head and shoulder on 4-hour and a falling wedge also on 4-hour. This area here will be the neckline region. So if price is able to break out above here, then we're to expect a further bullish movement. Also, we need the confirmation of our RSI to be clearly above 50 and possibly a MACD above 0. Very important. And the profit potential on this one, using the recent high here, I don't want to go to the next one just to be conservative. I'm looking at profit to the range of, in the range of about 110 pips of Fibonacci 38.2, as much as 200 pips of Fibonacci 50, and as much as 300 pips to Fibonacci 61.8. So we have something nice to catch. Again, if you're an intraday trader, it doesn't mean you are left out. Price will always make a series of higher highs and higher lows. So if it makes a higher high and draws to a higher low, you may look at an entry, to catch. But the setup is purely swing. That's what it is. All right, so we're bullish on the Euro AUD for this week. And also the GBP AUD, usually Euro AUD, GBP AUD, they are positively correlated, meaning they go in the same direction most of the time. And when you find a setup on Euro AUD, if you check GBP AUD, if there is a likelihood that you have almost the same, kind of pattern on the GBP AUD. So I'm trying to scan for my GBP AUD. Okay. All right. So it's just by the side here. All right. So this is the GBP AUD. Again, I start from the weekly time frame. And now for the Euro AUD, I saw a resistance on support. But on the GBP AUD, I found a direct support. You can see we have support, and the candlestick that closed last week closed as a rejection candle, on that support zone. So technically, we're expecting a reversal to the upside this week. You can see the long candle, long shadow on that support. This is the tip of the body, is still valid. So technically, we're expecting a reversal on the GBP AUD for this week. Okay, let's check the daily. Any information on the daily? Nothing on the daily. Just go straight to 4-hour. And just like we saw on the Euro AUD, I'm seeing the formation of an inverse head and shoulder, which again would trigger price to the upside. And we have here again a falling wedge pattern. All right, falling wedge pattern. Okay, so again, we look at the possible move on this could give us as much as about 155 pips to Fibonacci 38.2, about 286 pips, 286 pips rather to Fibonacci 50, and about 400 pips of Fibonacci 61.8. In fact, it has even more profit potential compared to the Euro AUD. For the benefit of those who are joining us, these are actually high probability setup. My focus is always on quality, not quantity. But so far, I've analyzed 3 instruments. I've talked about the GBP and the NZD USD, where I'm bearish, the Euro AUD and the GBP AUD, on which I am bullish. All right, so finally, Now, since GBP AUD is bullish, GBP NZD will also likely be bullish. But the issue is that we already are looking at NZD USD, so I think I'll just have to ignore this GB NZD so that we don't have a conflict rather, because it's going to go in opposite direction to the NZD USD. So, all right, I think we should just hold on to these three. They are quite good. We're bearish on the NZD USD on the 4 hour. We're bullish on the Euro AUD, and we're bullish on the GBP AUD. All right, so that's my analysis for us for this morning and for this week. These are swing setup with high probability of generating hundreds of pips, if all three trigger, which I believe will likely happen because of the level of probability on the three of them. Okay, if you have any specific instruments you want me to analyze, you can go ahead and drop it, and I'll definitely attend to you. But then let's just quickly look at gold, because I know gold is of interest to so many people. Let me look at the dollar index. Yeah. Now, I didn't mention all these instruments because they are not having as much probability as the ones that I mentioned. I always say that if I don't mention an instrument, it's because looking at it, the probability level may not be so strong. And I always focus more on the quality of a setup. Now, this is the dollar index. Dollar index on the daily time frame is in a range. You can see it, that's a range. Let's go down to 4 hour. The candles are not really defined like that. So it's boxed in a range, meaning that price could break out to the upside or to the downside. Wherever it breaks out, that's the next direction of the market. But then on gold, I'm not seeing anything on the daily. Okay, this is a 4 hour. On the 4 hour on gold, I'm seeing an uptrend here. Price makes higher low, and this region touching higher low. So technically, we may be looking for an upward movement on gold. But then let's scale down to a lower time frame, like 1 hour, then we check 15 minutes. All right. Now, even on 4 hour, this is looking like a triple bottom pattern, which is equally, a bullish pattern. So there's a resistance here. We may be experiencing some upsurge in gold, possibly. Let me just check down to 1 hour and 15 minutes. All right, this is what I will say. Now, this is actually an uptrend forming with higher lows, higher low, and this higher low is still forming, but it's looking a lot. It's not an inverse head and shoulder, it's a triple bottom. So if it's a triple bottom, the rule is that price needs to break out above the neckline, which will be this region here. All right. So if price breaks out here, you can target the resistance, and that can give as much as about 366 pips. Wow, that's quite a lot. But that's the move. You may not stay all through, catch as much as you can and get out. We are on uptrend on gold, but price needs to break that neckline region because this is forming a triple bottom pattern. So we're an uptrend on gold. Take note of that, please. All right, so I'm attending to the questions. Sammy is asking me to check GBP JPY. All right, so let's check on that. Okay, so this is GBP JPY on the daily time frame. On the weekly time frame, what I'm seeing here is actually a bearish engulfing candlestick pattern. Technically, it should give us a further bearish continuation. However, it's possible there's a retracement before that continuation. And since it's a weekly time frame, you never can tell, we end up with a week long of retracement. But I'll refer to what I'm seeing on the chart. Okay, okay, okay. I think it's getting clearer. All right, so we have a series of higher lows, higher lows, higher lows, and the tip of the candle here formed that higher low. So there's the likelihood of a retracement. The overall trend is actually bearish, but in the short term, we may experience a retracement this week. So let's go down to the daily. And that's what's already happening here. The retracement seems to be starting already. All right, it's forming what looks like an inverse head and shoulder here. This is the neckline. Okay. So if in the course of now it's swing setup or yeah, it's swing, it could happen today also. If in the course of today price breaks out above this neckline, you may trigger a buy. If price breaks out above the neckline, because that's an inverse head and shoulder forming, you may trigger a buy. But it's not a trade you want to sit in for too long because price may reverse, but at least maybe it may get to Fibonacci 38.2. That one is as good as a level we cannot, that price will likely get to. Maybe Fibonacci 50, maybe, but at least your surest bet is this Fibonacci 38.2. Don't sit too long in it. Just target these two. If you're opening two trades, a TP1 at Fibonacci 38.2, a TP2 at Fibonacci 50, because reversal could occur anytime. So for Sammy, that's my outlook on GBP JPY. Madam Onaji AUD card. I'm actually bearish on AUD card, but then let me show you my view on it. Okay, I should have mentioned this in place of that NZD, GPNZD. But then it's all good. It's good that you asked. All right, so for AUD card, on the weekly, I think my analysis on this starts from the weekly. On the weekly time frame, you can see that price closed last week on a resistance zone. It's quite a bit far apart. There is a minor resistance here, and the candle closed as a rejection candle touching that resistance. So technically, we're looking for a downward movement. And I think this is going to be clearer on the monthly time frame. On the monthly, you can see there's also, you know, a downward trend line. Along with the resistance means we're looking for a further bearish movement. We can take it back to the weekly to still see. You can see price touching the lower eye, lower eye, lower eye. Lower eye, lower eye. So we expect a downward movement and the resistance right here. Okay. So we have a confluence at this point where the trend line and the resistance, both met from where we expect a downward movement. All right. So we can take it straight to 4 hour. And on 4 hour time frame, we have a rising wedge pattern. And we have a head and shoulder, shoulder, head, shoulder. We're waiting for a breakout. This is a recent low, recent high using Fibonacci. We'll be looking for profit in the range of about 111 pips of Fibonacci 38.2, about 180 pips of Fibonacci 50, and about 254 pips of Fibonacci 61.8. That's my view on AUD card. Now it's a swing. Now, like I said earlier, if you don't want to enter as a swing, you can enter as a day trader. Wait for a breakout. There will be a retracement. Price may make a high. You may enter from there. There is likelihood of another retracement. Anytime there's a retracement, can just use that recent high created to at least maybe the first two anyway to make an entry to ride the wave downwards. But overall, we are bearish on the AUD card. AUD card, we're bearish. And finally, I'm looking at Euro
Thank you very
USD.
much.
You're welcome,
I'm
ma.
good.
You're welcome,
Okay.
ma. I'm looking at Euro USD from Ahmed Shitu. Now, Euro USD hit a major resistance zone a couple of weeks back with this very, very sharp rejection candle resistance. Technically, our overall outlook still remains bearish on Euro USD. Though last week we've seen some bullish movement, but that is just a retracement with price closing at that resistance. So we still expect a downward move this week. So we go to the 4 hour. Let me check the daily. It's not really giving much clarity at the moment, but notwithstanding, we're looking for price to break out below this current structure. RSI clearly below 50, MACD clearly below 0. And you can even take it down to 1 hour, I believe. Yeah, you can take it down to 1 hour. But if you're doing 1 hour, I will advise you make an entry. You have a minor support here, which is closer to what's happening in the market now. So you want to see a new candle break out below this support zone to trigger a sell downwards. And this one, you are not staying too long also, because on the weekly we're not having, on the 4 hour, we're not having a clear-cut reversal pattern. So I would say you're looking at profit, just let me check, in the range of some 15 to 20 pips and you're out. More like scalping. You're not having the perfect reversal pattern on this. So trade it with a lot of caution. All the ones I mentioned have high probability. Mr. Ogochukwu, I've mentioned NZD USD, that's high probability. I mentioned Euro AUD, that's high probability. GBP AUD, high probability. NZD USD is bearish. Euro AUD is bullish. GBP AUD is bullish. And this AUD card is actually one of my setup, which escaped my mind, but then it equally has a high probability. So the question now is, are you a day trader or a swing trader? They are all swing. So, but you can look at them and probably enter on intraday if you're an intraday trader, if you know how to do that. But generally, they have high probability. I only mention high probability setup. Now, if people request and I'm analyzing, I always say it that anything outside what I'm analyzing, can be a grade B. But the ones I talk about, they are usually very, very high probability setup. So I hope that answered the question, Mr. Ugochukwu. All right, so with that, I've come to the end of today's analysis session. Watch out, it's going to be a great trading week. Well, we have a lot of programs lined up for the week, physical training sessions, online training sessions, and much more. All right, we have another analysis again by 12:30 p.m. this afternoon. Do try to join us. Take care and have a great week ahead. Bye-bye.